Hi everyone, this is Shelley Vale Smith with Bright Spot Ed talking about instructional planning for a return to school with COVID. Because as educators, we can think of few other things right now. So really just where to start, knowing that there are no right answers. This presentation is really to just give faculties and staffs ideas on where to start as far as thinking through the planning, because we know that it's going to be very dependent on what's going on in your community. But obviously our hearts are always with what's best for our students and our teachers. So again, how do I envision you using this information really to sit down with faculty and staff, brainstorm ideas, come up with plans, and then seek input, because we know that it's going to take kind of a massive logistical effort to get all of these things in place by the time school starts. And we want to have worked out as many of the kinks as we can. So we know that we're going to be looking at different formats. There's going to be face-to-face. There's going to be this blended or hybrid where students come to school some of the time and then do virtual learning the other part of the time. And then some students are going to be fully virtual. So thinking about how do you communicate? This is a vital part of making this process go smoother. And so think about communicating in multiple ways. And if you don't have a communication plan, I would suggest that you start thinking about what are your processes on how you're going to communicate information, because in the absence of a plan, people are still going to communicate, but it may not be the right information, and it may not be when and how you want it communicated. So the other piece of advice is to make sure that what you are communicating is approved by the people above you in that organizational chart. I will be doing a presentation on communication plans, so I hope that you will tune into that. So planning for face-to-face, blended, and virtual is an overwhelming task. And so if you can think about all of it being the same instruction, but just different modes, because we don't want to reinvent the wheel, and we don't want students who are learning in one format learning different content than the others. And so this is also to simplify things for us, because we know that if it is complicated, we're probably not actually going to be able to pull it off. So if you can just think of the same content, but different ways of sharing it. So another huge thing that we're going to be dealing with in the fall are these safe emotional environments. We already have been focusing on this, but it is going to be of utmost importance this fall, considering what is going on around us. And one thing that I'm very adamant about is that we've got to take care of ourselves so that we can take care of our students. So teacher well-being is going to be a huge issue. And one of the things that I think that we have to do is just acknowledge that if we can't take care of ourselves, we are not going to be able to take care of them. Teaching routines. This is always important, but it's going to be more important than ever because our students have been away from us more than they have ever been. And also we're going to be teaching them new things to do, whether that's sanitation, whether that's mask, whether that's social distancing. So we're really going to have to think about how do we teach those routines. The other suggestion for social emotional health is having a morning meeting, having a check-in time with all students. This really allows your class to come together as a community of learners and start the day with how am I doing? If I'm not doing well, then let's address it before it becomes a problem. And then also allowing students to share these stories that we know that they're going to be sharing if we do not give them an opportunity to do it in a structured environment. And then this way we can take the opportunity to focus on their strengths. So if they had an obstacle, how did they overcome it? How did they persevere during a difficult time? The other thing that I will remind everyone of is that many of them have been in traumatic situations. So we want to make sure our classrooms do not trigger any of that. And so loud, chaotic environments are generally not very good for those students. If you want more information, check out responsiveclassroom.org for more information on morning meetings. Going ahead and planning ahead of time, what are age-appropriate discussions of COVID for the age group that you're working with? So that's going to look different between kindergarten, third grade, sixth grade. And so going ahead and having talking points laid out for teachers to talk to both students and to parents, having a plan for what we do when this happens, what students need to do, what parents need to do. Having all that planned out ahead of time helps us avoid that chaos as much as possible. So instructional planning, here are a few things that you may want to consider. I've talked to people who were departmentalized in upper elementary and who are going back to self-contained. This may cause a lot of stress on people who are used to planning for one subject or two subjects. And so we really want to use collaboration to not only alleviate the stress, but to just make our instruction better, because I always feel like more heads are better than one. If teachers are going to be rotating classrooms instead of the students, then what does that look like for our own organization? As a teacher who floated from classroom to classroom for an entire year, I can tell you that is not an easy task. And so it's going to require a lot of planning. Room layout. I know that some schools are already taking out extra furniture. They're taking out stuffed animals, they're taking out rugs, anything that can't be sanitized. And so those are all going to be considerations. And then also teachers are already posting great ideas about keeping materials separate from other students. And again, routines are going to be incredibly important because we can come up with a great plan, but if our students don't follow them, then it's not going to last long. Transitions are always a huge point of concern, and even more so in this era of social distancing. And again, this plan needs to be created by the people who are actually doing the work, because I do not know the details of how things need to work like the classroom teacher who's actually doing it every day. For our secondary folks, you're probably not going to be able to do a self-contained environment. And so you may be looking at a modified schedule where you do longer classes, but fewer classes in a day, a modified block schedule. This is really going to look different. We don't supervise students to the same degree that our elementary folks do, and so it may mean assigning lockers in a different way than we've ever done. It may be by homeroom, and you have people actually take their homeroom to the lockers and then come back to class before they travel in the hallway. We may have teachers that are rotating classrooms. Again, that's going to take a lot of planning and organization. Room layout, there's not as many options for our secondary, but it is going to be important to teach them routines, and especially because many of our secondary students may be getting new technology, and we're going to have to teach them routines for that. Again, transitions. Again, please let the people who are doing the work plan this, because they are the ones who are going to know best how to do it. Instructional planning is really my passion, and so if there is a silver lining in this really dark cloud that we are in right now, it's that we can innovate and do the things that we know we've been wanting to do. And this is a way to really focus on those things that we've known all along that can be more engaging to students. And so we want to prioritize our most important skills. And so backward design is something that I'll show you a little bit on, and I'm going to be doing another webinar on it soon. Thematic planning, and many people are more familiar with thematic planning, where we either pair subjects, or have many subjects coming together, and we'll be doing a webinar on it as well. Really what we're going to have to do in this environment is build in these pre-assessments so we can determine who needs more help, because we certainly don't want to spend all of our time going back and teaching last year's content. We really need to be focused on grade level skills and helping students achieve those. And then finally, just communicating what we're doing to our parents, why, so that they can understand and support us. If you are not familiar with backward design, it comes from Understanding by Design by Grant Wiggins and Jay McTighe, and this is an incredibly oversimplified version of it, but it's really taking whatever your ultimate goal, putting it in the middle of this bull's eye, and then planning from there. And so if I want to have students analyze theme, comparing to text, then obviously I'm going to have to teach them what theme is. I'm going to have to teach them how to compare to text, and then ultimately I will get them to compare to text looking at theme. And so this really gives us the opportunity to build in these authentic problem-based tasks along the way, and then this gives us a great opportunity to work in that social and emotional learning. So again, we will be doing more on that. Just the pluses of this kind of approach are that it can be less stressful for students, having less formal assessments and more informal assessments, more problem or project-based assessments. It can be more engaging for students, and it may encourage them to do some of that learning on their own that we really want students to do. They go pick up a novel about the Depression because we're studying it. Again, we'll be doing a presentation on this soon. Counseling. We already had huge needs for mental health and counseling before this pandemic, and it's going to be greater than ever before. What I suspect is that you will not get an extra counseling unit at your school, and so you may have to really think about what does it look like with virtual, because they need more counseling services than face-to-face students just because of their isolation and other issues. So we may have to have classroom teachers take over some of that whole group instruction that counselors were doing, so that our counselors can do more small group and individual services, especially with our virtual. And again, incorporating this into our overall lesson plan design may alleviate that stress. Not sure whether you call it RTI or MTSS, but it really is one and the same, where we're looking at students who need additional support in instructional, behavioral, and social emotional issues. And so just a reminder that you may have students who left in the spring without issues, and now they may have them just because of what's happened. So be on the lookout for changes. Our face-to-face intervention is going to look different because of this pandemic, and we're really having to develop virtual intervention. And so we'll be doing a webinar on RTI during COVID, and really how do we progress monitor when we have students in such different places and learning through different methods. Thank you so much for attending. Like I said, we will be having a series of upcoming webinars on different things: communication plans, backward design, tiered instruction, and RTI during COVID. Again, this is Bright Spot Ed, and I hope that you will visit our website, brightspoted.com, or visit us on social media. Have a great day.